Hello everyone, in this video we're going to discuss user interface design patterns. First we'll talk about what are user interface design patterns, then we'll explore some examples, next we'll look at the history of design patterns and their use in architecture, and finally we'll look at Amazon.com to check out some examples of these patterns in action. So what are user interface or UI design patterns? We can basically say that they are simply solutions to common design problems. These are patterns, so they're reference points that designers can use when they're creating interfaces. And as a reference point, they should be something that's not too general. So if a pattern is too general, then it almost becomes not a pattern anymore. It's not as identifiable and it really doesn't give us any help when we're designing something. However, if it's too specific, then there isn't much leeway because patterns should ultimately be adaptable to each project. So, since design patterns can be applied to a wide variety of instances, designers should adapt them to specific context within each design project. Another way we can think about design patterns is like a common language. A language has rules, but it also has a lot of flexibility so that we can express what we want in the way that we want to. So now let's look at some examples of UI design patterns to better understand this idea. One problem that a user might have is that they need to easily return to the home page of a site. The solution or pattern that we can implement is to create a link to the home page of the site on the logo and on every page of the site. So if you're on a website, you probably are used to clicking on the logo and being returned to the home page, and you probably expect the logo to be a home link and to be placed in the same spot on every page. So this is an example of a design pattern. So let's look at another example of a design pattern called pagination. One problem a user might have is that they need to view and search for certain results within a list of content. And a good example of this is when you're doing a Google search. The solution or pattern that we can implement is to divide the content into smaller and sequential pages and provide links to each of those pages. So through this pattern, we can reduce the complexity of having a lot of content on the page. So think about if you're doing a Google search and you're presented with millions or billions of results. By breaking it down into pages, it's a lot more easy for the user to digest. And again, I'm sure you see content organized like this often on several websites. I'll also put some links in the description if you're interested in exploring other patterns. There's some really cool ones out there and things that you might not realize are patterns, but that you encounter all the time when you're on the web. So check out those links down below. So now that we've looked at some examples, let's discuss where this idea of a design pattern comes from exactly. These patterns were first used in architecture, and the idea is from a famous book called A Pattern Language. And I highly recommend this book. It's very fascinating if you're interested in design. But it was published in 1977, and the book basically creates a new language called a pattern language, unsurprisingly. And this language is made up of 253 architectural and urban design patterns. So everything from solutions for designing cities, gardens, specific rooms, and even objects like doorknobs. Each pattern describes a problem and then offers a solution, just like we saw in the previous examples. So now let's take a look at an example of a design pattern in the book. One design pattern is circulation realms. A problem that can occur when designing large buildings or groups of buildings is that people can easily get lost, and I'm sure you've had this experience before. And when people get lost and have no idea where they are in a building, it can create a lot of mental stress. So think about going to a museum or a large shopping mall, for example. So the solution to this problem is to organize these large buildings with a series of realms, where you can pass through each realm through a gateway, and where these realms become smaller and smaller as you pass through. Then also name these realms so that you can identify them and tell people exactly where to go. So in the image here, you can see that we start with a major realm, then they get smaller and smaller, And this will make it easier for people to navigate in large buildings. So now let's take a look at Amazon's website to check out some examples of these design patterns. So one of the first patterns we can identify is this logo with a home link in the right-hand corner. The logo provides branding, and like we discussed earlier, this pattern provides users with the ability to go back to a safe location on the site. Next to the logo, we have a hamburger menu because it looks sort of like a hamburger. And menus like this are used to conserve the real estate of a website, meaning it hides certain content so that you aren't using up so much space on the page. Menus like this and drop-down menus, for example, help the user view deeper levels of a page's hierarchy, and on a site like Amazon with a lot of content, this can be very useful. So when we expand this menu, we have a lot more options, but they might not be the most important things you see when you land on the site. Another pattern we can see at the top here is the shopping cart. Online retailers like Amazon want to create a good shopping experience for their customers, and a good online experience should be realized through real-world analogies. The shopping cart is a well-known metaphor when shopping online that mimics a real-life shopping cart. You can put items in your cart, and you can also take them out before checking out. Another pattern that we can see is that the important information is above the fold of the page. So we can see the navigation links at the top and cards with links to products. We see banners and advertisements. Usually we want users to scroll or click on certain items, and by putting the appropriate information towards the top of the page, you can achieve that. And then of course, sometimes the location of the fold will be different for different devices as well. So now let's pretend that we're buying a copy of a pattern language on Amazon to see the patterns used when setting up a product page. If we talk about this as a problem and solution, we could say that our problem is that users need to know information about a certain product in order to decide whether or not they want to purchase this product. So our solution is to present the product to the user with relevant information and maybe also provide links to other products. So here we're on the product page. We can see that the page has the same logo as the home page, as well as the same fonts, layout, and color scheme. We can see that the search bar maintains our last search, and we can easily go back to our results page so we know that we are looking at an item in a search list or a product from a list of products. These are all very good design patterns that make the shopping experience much better for the users. An important part of our solution is making sure that we have the right elements of a product page. And usually there are four main elements for a product page. So first we have the product title. What is the item the user is looking at? Then we have a picture of the product, and this gives users a better understanding of the product and what it looks like. Then we have the price, as well as the add to cart and or buy button. There are, of course, several other elements that can enhance a product page, like descriptions and product reviews and labels, but these four are the most essential to our solution. So thank you all so much for watching this video. Make sure to check out the links in the description for more information on UI design patterns.